Hello, this is Richard Jacobs from Speakeasy Marketing. Today I'm going to talk to you about the cycle of amateur to expert. That is a really, really important thing to go through in your life and to go through as many times as possible. If you think back, maybe to when you first learned how to ride a bicycle, at first you didn't know what to do. You fell down, it was frightening, it was just, you scrape your knee, scrape your arm, and you were an amateur. But you kept doing it, you kept practicing, and it got more and more comfortable. And soon, after a time, you might have been able to push off with your legs and coast a bit. You weren't maybe ready to put your feet on the pedals and pedal, but you got to that point. And then you'd plateau, and then maybe at some point you'd push off with your feet, and maybe you'd be able to pedal a half a pedal before the bike would start to fall over and you'd have to stop. And then there came that moment. That day, I remember when it happened to me when I was about 8 years old. Maybe I was old to have learned this, but I remember that day where I pedaled once, twice, 3 times, and I felt, wow, this is amazing. And I was off. And shortly after, later that same day, I was able to actually start riding. And within a few days, I was riding as if I had ridden for years. Fast forward many years, and I got really good at bicycle riding. I could ride with no hands. I could, eat a sandwich while I rode. I could do all kinds of stuff. Same thing with driving. Maybe you haven't ridden a bicycle, but maybe when you remember when you learned to drive a car. At first, maybe you learned in a parking lot where you took driver's ed, and everything was freaking you out. There was all the road signs. There was all the stuff to pay attention to, and it was just so difficult. But now, I'm sure a lot of you have been driving 20, 30, maybe even 40 years, and it's become such habit. You can drive to a place and not even know how you've gotten there. I'm sure that's happened to you. It's happened to me for sure. But what I realize now that I have children and they're learning things is that it's very, very important to go through this amateur to expert cycle. And now I'm going to relate this back to business. So, as attorneys, you went to law school and remember back to that first time you got a client. You were probably very frightened and really unsure what to do. Maybe you took the route of working in the prosecutor's office, or you were an assistant to somebody else, legal assistant. So that kind of paved the way and made it less difficult. But remember the first case or two you worked on. There were all these issues, and you weren't sure what to do. You knew how to act in court, at least what you read in school, but you weren't in the actual courts that you practice in now. And I'm sure it was very nerve-wracking. And then fast forward to today, where you've had 5, 10, 20, 30 years experience, and you're totally comfortable. You're in front of Judge so-and-so, and you're arguing a motion, and you're just totally comfortable with it because you've done it so many times. You've handled hundreds of divorces, or thousands of criminal cases, or thousands of bankruptcy cases. You've gone from amateur to expert, even though the bar says you can't call yourself one, but you are. So the reason I bring this up is that the more that you go through this cycle in life, and the more you look for these opportunities, even when you already have an established career. Let's say you're an attorney and you want to learn about marketing, but you just feel like, I don't know about this. How am I supposed to learn about it? Maybe pick a small, specific area of marketing and just start learning about it. Learn about it from the people that do your website, or learn about it by reading, or, you'll go from amateur eventually to expert. That's the path I've taken. I started out, it's coming up on about 5 years, and I looked one night, and I looked at Google AdWords, and I looked at some of the most expensive pay-per-click keywords, and they were DUI lawyer and mesothelioma lawyer. And I thought, maybe there's money in this market, and maybe I can work with attorneys. And I knew nothing, zero about the market. But I started, and I learned, and I started with DUI, and I interviewed attorneys, and I learned more, and I eventually got up to over 500 interviews of attorneys, not only DUI, but pretty much every practice area you could think of. And I learned about websites and SEO, and I learned about all kinds of marketing, and I've been to conferences, and I've spent a lot of time and effort to really grow my knowledge. And guess what? I can now comfortably call myself an expert on attorney marketing. I couldn't at first, and to the outside observer, they would say, How did you learn that? I still get asked that all the time. I learned by doing. I learned by accepting the fact that I'm going to start out knowing nothing, and I'm going to learn and learn and learn, and I'm going to become an expert. So I'm not sure how you can apply this to your business. You've got to think about that. But if you're thinking about going into a new practice area or refocusing on the types of clients you want to get, let's say, you're in criminal defense and you want to start getting some PI clients, auto accidents or something, or you want to add bankruptcy to your practice, or you want to transition out of bankruptcy, you're going to go through this cycle. I'm sorry to tell you, you are. But you're going to go through the cycle. So you're going to end up eventually as an expert. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some bumps in the road and all that. But you can do it. Look what you've already done in your life. You've gone through this cycle so many times. Do it one more time. And don't be afraid to take that next step. So I know this is more of an inspirational than a specific hardcore learning audio, but I hope this helps you. If you'd like to speak to me about any other marketing principles or get some help with your marketing, contact speakeasymarketinginc.com on the web or call 888-225-8594.